Here we are. Hi everybody. How you doing? Hope you're doing fine. Yes. Okay. Himasha is here. Or Cardamom Collective. Hey!
So weird.
Yes.
I've never shown my face on this page. It's pretty
Oh, me too. It's the first
like
time. Let me put my volume on. Okay.
nice.
Hi there.
Hi. How are you?
I'm fine. What about you?
All good, all good.
That's
All good.
nice. I like your background, like very
Thanks. It's not
intellectual.
mine. They're not mine, but yeah, it makes me
Okay,
look so.
okay, that's good. So I see people are coming in. So
Yeah, oh my God.
uh, hi David, very
Hi,
far
Dave.
from it. So before we start, I would just say like thanks to Masha and the group of Cardamom Collective. And I don't know if you read on the bio, so or if you want to just say a few words about this project.
Of Cardamomo.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for having me. First of all,
Uh,
yeah, this is the first time I show my face on the page because the idea of the page is creating a collective space for South Asians and Italians. So that's why I've never showed my face anywhere. But yeah, but on the side, I also work and collaborate with different NGOs in the migration field. So today we're going to discuss and put together our experiences of the migration field, of migration and health intersecting with gender, which is usually
yeah.
also an aspect that's not very given attention to when one discusses about migration, which is also very wide field. Like we're talking about economic migrants, we're talking about refugee, we're talking about second generation. Like it's an intersection between race and gender that's not very taken care of. At least in Italy, there's not still a lot of space for it. But yeah, thank you for creating this space today.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, definitely. So let's get straight to the points. So somebody said, can you pin the topic? No, I can't because I don't know how to do it, but I will do it. I will try to do it. Um, So we're going to be like it's an interview, but it's going to be very interactive. I'm going to ask questions to Masha, but definitely Masha can ask me questions. Like it's going to be very interactive, and even all of you that are following us, if you have any curiosity or something, you can tap the questions, and maybe at the end of the interview, we can try to answer one or two questions if you have. That I think sounds okay. So, why did you decide to study migration phenomenon and work with migration women with the NGO? So, what moved you to study and work on this field?
Okay, so David just said something.
Yeah,
So I guess partly I dedicated myself uh, because as like it's part of my experience as a woman of color in Italy,
yeah,
and a daughter of migrants, of course. So studying this process was also part of understanding myself and understanding where I located myself within a general like homogenous cultural environment where I studied in Italy at least growing up, and
mhm,
where I located my parents and their experience of migration, but also the narratives that we all are surrounded by about migration, which are usually very monotonous. So I
yeah,
guess part of that, and I was privileged to have a chance to study it and work with it and be an activist within it, but not experience it firsthand as other people have done. And I had a chance to leave as well so that I could study the post-colonial roots of most of the narratives that we see today, which has been very important for me for to understand this as well in a manner that wouldn't just flatten it out and appropriate the entire narrative. And on a more personal note, I guess part of the gender focus comes from the volunteer activities I did as a child with
Mm-hmm.
kids. Directly led me to also get in contact with the mothers of the children I was working with, and was a big discrepancy between their experience of migration as women and as migrants, because they went through a double discrimination in most of the things they had to do.
Yeah.
I was just helping with home stuff, but as women, they had to go through this double challenged experience, and I mean that's how I guess the gender focus naturally flowed from, and partly I guess on a hindsight, the gender focus comes also from the discrepancies between my experience in Italy as a woman of color, but also my mother's experience as a woman of color that has moved here and that's a domestic worker. And you know, there's a massive discrepancy, and I don't know if you felt that as well. But yeah, that's mine at least
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I think if we take out this question, it's going to be like we can talk hours about, but yeah, definitely yeah, as my mother to as you say, we've as a women and as a black women, we have been through double discrimination
Yeah,
and I think I'm having a different experience compared to my mother at the same age because
yeah,
my mother arrived in Italy at 30, 29 years old. I'm 30. So, and as you say, we have the privilege to have a kind of education and a kind of life. Um, and so definitely our experience is different, but still we are experience a kind of discrimination being a
yeah,
woman and being black. And
yeah,
so I can understand, I can only imagine what these women that come in from another country have to face
yeah, yeah,
in a destination country that can be Europe, as it can be like even a US, because my co-founder of the Feminist Health blog, she's her name is Eunice, and she lives in Canada, and they
okay,
have, of course, a type of migration from African countries, especially, and they have even the kind of experience and discrimination and the problems. So yeah, definitely,
yeah,
I totally understand what you're talking about.
yeah.
And so how it has been your experience with migrant women? Like, do you want to share us like an episode or something? So how working with them, the difficulties or the challenges, or even the good things that you experience working with migrant women.
Well, so I worked in different environments. So I've had different
Hmm.
experiences in the UK and in Italy as well.
Yeah.
And the environment is always frustrating, clearly, because of all the challenges that you have to go through, like legally, but bureaucratically. It's very tiring, but at the same time, it's also very inspiring. But especially when the NGO or the organization you're collaborating with aims at creating a space rather than just helping out, which makes a difference. Like it really does, because and this reality is something I've seen mostly in the UK rather than here, for different
Okay.
reasons.
Okay.
But yeah, but the NGOs I worked with were mainly aimed at like not representing, but like creating the space so that people that went through specific situations, we're talking about abuse for abuse during trafficking. Trafficking is
Mhm.
like it's a whole entire situation, or as domestic workers. So that was aimed at empowering and like helping also people that have been here a lot for longer to help the people that have like reached Europe lately, you know, like so that's probably the best experience I've had within the migration environment. And sadly it's a reality I still haven't found yet in Italy, and I guess it's for
Okay.
different reasons. And I guess it's also partly a reason of funding and of how
Hmm.
the NGO environment is still moving its way through finding its own structure, you know, in a way
Yeah.
that doesn't take away the voice from the women, doesn't make them like just side, like doesn't take their empathy, you know, appropriate their empathy, which is the worst thing that can happen. Like it doesn't help. And I guess partly it also reconnects on how this entire dynamic is dealt with in Italy and in Europe in general yet, right? Like most of the funding from European institutions. And if we think about it, European institutions itself, they have a scarily low percentage of representation within the top, right? And of course, like these grassroots realities, they work grassroots, but they also rely on like funding that comes from these public projects. So how, like, I've noticed it's really hard to allocate properly funding and like create policies that help and don't hide issues when like it's hard to tackle systematic racism when representatives are lacking or not giving space. So yeah, I think that's my general
So
perception.
you say, so for what you say, you find more, let me say, fruitful working with NGOs in UK compared to Italy.
So far, I mean, I've come back like just for like I've been here for 6 months, so I'm still I don't want to talk about all the out, so I'm not sure what smaller grassroots organization out there, but I've had this positive experience in the UK where I've met incredible women of color representing their own circles, leaving space for other people to heal, to talk, to politically campaign for their own causes. You know, it's like which makes
yeah, sure.
when you let a domestic worker campaign for domestic workers laws, and when you let generally like when you create when you create a space for representation. And maybe it's also because, you know, the migration process started like way before in the UK, and it's a much more multicultural society. But I guess that's what we should aim for. But definitely that was the most positive experience, and I recollect it to the UK.
Yeah, I have your video post. You can see me, right? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I can't, like, the video freezed. Okay, now talk.
Nice. I see you moving.
Okay, now it's better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I forgot that you just arrived in Italy 6 months ago, so definitely I understand that you can give like direct an opinion about NGOs here and everything. So maybe we can even like another time do another, like after full time, do another interview, another chat talking about your experience in NGO compared with the English system. So one thing, like I think is it's important to say, to ask you that you've been working on the front line. What are the type of problems that women have when they arrive in another country? Because everybody might think about just the language. No, I believe there are different issues that women have to front when they arrived in a destination country. This is how they called the country that migrants, when they move from their original country to their destination country, that we know all of us, maybe it's not the first country where they want to stay, but because of the bureaucracy and the law, after they stop there for years. So what are the challenges in the short and long term these women fronting?
Yeah, well, so there's many.
I can imagine.
That really depends on the migration experience, and you know, people a lot of reason, and the problem is in fact the fact that the general narrative about migration tensionize this experience to just one. And in relation to what we're discussing today, for example, firstly, the homogenization happened from a gender perspective. Like the migration, the general migration narrative that we hear mainly focuses on men, right? And which is also like a mistake per se, just because it's also different kind of men, it's different kinds of genders arriving. It's like it's for women, it's for non-binary people. Like it's a lot of different realities that are at the center of international migration. So that's firstly one problem. And the experience of a female, of a migrant woman, is very different from the experience of a migrant man, and the lack of attention this or a non-binary people, the lack of attention towards this gender makes this women more within quotes. I don't know if the camera is working. I mean that it makes them more fragile. Sorry, it makes them structure more vulnerable, which does not mean that they're inherently fragile, but just because this.
I have some problems with the video and audio
abuses and to falling within.
Okay.
I
don't know if it's my problem with my network.
Maybe.
Yeah, now it's better. Okay, let's try. Okay. So you were saying that's yeah.
Getting there.
Yeah. yeah. So you say about that this experience make them more vulnerable.
Yeah, in a structural way, it makes them more vulnerable to abuse, because it doesn't take them into account within most of the narratives about migration. And once you tackle the gender aspect, there's so many other specificities about a migrant woman that needs to be taken into account, right? Like there's, why is the woman moving? Is she moving for, is she why arrived to Europe? Is she a labor migrant for skilled or unskilled positions? Is she fleeing war? Is she a family member, which comes with a series of other psychological long-term conditions, which might which might take into account isolation or not? Is she victim of trafficking, of course? And this also leads us to like diversified economic status these women, right? And the diversity of legal and status of these women, right? Which will define their short and long term. And also leads us to question like how are class and rights interlinked within this this field, and why are women generally just not taken into account? Who do women's rights in Europe look at? Do they take into account the existence of these realities, of this diverse realities?
Yeah.
So I guess that's definitely there's definitely a priori issue that women migrants go through at first. And then once they arrive here, there's so many other more things that need to be taken into account. They face maternal health challenges. They face sexual reproductive health challenges, exposure to violence depending on their experience. And also we have to take into account also the children's health issues that accompany them, if we want to look at the health aspect, right? So these are all like a series of things that are not taken into account when you ignore the fact that there's women within this massive yeah. I mean, you probably have had like firsthand experience, maybe in your experience with this diverse realities.
I worked as doctor for migrants welcome centers, so it's it's very like I can really put myself in your words and your experience. As you say, when they just arrive, the gender issue has to be considered, and as you say, sometimes they just consider migrants as just one person, and
Yeah.
they are like managing the situation of this person like for all similar, and instead it's not true, especially for women, because as you
Yeah.
say, women can be a mother, can be a wife, can be as you say like a professional person, can be like somebody of being abused, being trafficking, like there's so much various person that you have to consider, and I know that the resources are not enough to, I mean, consider all these aspects, but what I've seen is they've not even the desire or the will of the curiosity or the effort to at least consider all these
Yeah.
aspects. For example, when I started to work for these centers, they were so happy, and I asked them, "Why are you so happy that I'm here?" Because you're a woman, you're a woman, and you're black. And I was like, okay. And I have noticed too the difference, because yeah, I've noticed
Okay.
the difference because they told me like when sometimes they would just come and they tell me the problem and everything, and that the mediator always told me like, you know, that they never told me such things in months,
Yeah.
because they trust you,
Yeah.
because you're a woman and you're black.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm Nigerian, so, and they were like one of the most migrants that comes in Italy from Africa are Nigerians,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of women, and so and from there, because even me, like before, you know, when you're not in the situation, you don't see the situation. So even before, you just see on the TV the news, and maybe you see it on the streets, but you don't know the story of these people. So when I was there in the situation, I understand that actually to have somebody to trust is very
Yeah.
important, and actually can help not only the person per se, but all the system. Like it can make it work.
Yeah.
So to have cultural mediator is good, but the person that does the mediation and the cultural mediation have to really understand the background of these people, and
Yeah.
um, and for a woman, they have to understand in general women know what they face as, and as being a woman of color, that means that
Yeah.
women of color have a tradition, have culture, have religion. So all these aspects you have to understand and
Yeah.
face when you're trying to help migrants, and you're trying to help women migrants.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
100%. Oh,
definitely, no, I would
oh,
say
go
like
on.
I
Sorry.
definitely understand. I definitely understand what you're saying, and that's why I always highlight the need of studies, of courses for healthcare workers, and in general for all type of the field of workers, because when you want, anywhere you work, you want to put the person in a good field, in a good environment for working. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
need to take, yeah, you need to take attention of this thing. So but I think that I've noticed even during this experience is sometimes the low quality of education, illiteracy, for some people, because we know that many of them they actually came with a degree and something, but we even know the quality of education in low income countries.
Yeah.
But do you think, even for your experience, that these factors, so education, illiteracy, actually influences the condition of women, of migrant women in Europe?
Well, yeah, I mean, it really depends on the case, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally, I mean, I don't know, that really depends on the experiences, but I personally wouldn't say that illiteracy directly influences
Mm-hmm.
misinformation, because the way migration has has excessively changed in the last years. It's very often like migrants have phones and have calls, allow you to stay in contact with the community you're trying to reach and the community you have left, so that usually there's some sort of a network that allows people to at least stay relatively informed. But of course, it really depends on what sort of things we're talking about. Like if we're talking about trafficking, of course, like illiteracy, like issue of like illiteracy is even out of the way, because we're talking about a completely new set of traumas and like
Mm-hmm.
forced arrested development. So in that case, of course, illiteracy is like a side problem to lots of other that need to be taken into account. And also, I mean, there's it's also important to remember that nowadays many migrants that arrived to Italy, for example, even have university degrees, and which says a lot about the different classes that are moving now. And this also means that they might be talking, you know, like classical Arabic or literary Pino, like, you know, really advanced. They might be really advanced in their own languages, but then perhaps they might not know Italian because it's a very specific language, and that creates some discrepancies when they're trying to go through the different application processes or healthcare, and also vice versa. On the others, we also have the issue that lots of times the professionals they work with don't really know English or have a hard time understanding different dialects of English, which are legitimate, which are not the cat is on the table, right? Not just like standard English that you learn on the. So that creates a lot of issues, and that's probably the harshest part of it, like of this linguistic discrepancy. Like if I take into account even like most of my family, like in that aspect, they would be pseudo illiterate because they would have a hard time understanding Italian when it gets really
Yeah.
formal. Like it gets really formal in healthcare, it gets extremely formal in law. Like that, like most of the Italians also have a hard time to understand legal stuff just because it's written in riddles, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, mediators help in that case, but it's also a problem. Mediators also fade away because they have a lot of work to do, and it's hard to keep up with everyone. So that's like linguistic isolation definitely becomes a problem in that sense, more than the illiteracy per se, and that's
Okay. So
a
you,
more
you so
widespread
you say that
issue.
language is a huge barrier.
Yeah, language definitely becomes
Mm.
at times a barrier, which like a good mediator can of course like overcome, but it takes a lot of understanding also of like, you know, the sentences that the person is trying to say, like because sometimes words don't really express what you're trying to what you're trying to convey, right? So that definitely becomes
Mm-hmm.
an issue, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely like language, especially in a country as Italy, that um, English is not, I believe,
The
like
first.
English. Live and I have a living like testimony. Like if you ask anyone, they would say
Yeah.
that, oh yeah, doing English lessons, I wasn't listening. I didn't care until I started travel. And obviously, when you travel, you need to communicate. So you started like to learn it, like speaking and learning English, and definitely nowadays, like as a Netflix or whatever, it's much easier
Yeah.
to listen in English. So definitely, if I think about people coming here and don't have a lot of people speaking at least one foreign language, that can be
Yeah.
English, that can be French, that can be even
Yeah, exactly.
Spanish, um, it's hard to tell your problems. you know, and
Exactly.
so I definitely understand. At the same time, I think, especially for women, unfortunately, I've seen like very like illiteracy is kind of high compared
Yeah.
to men, even because as we wrote in in one of article of the feminist Health blog, like women in low income country, they don't have access to they're not so independent. So without being independent, you know, have access to a lot of resources, even education resources. So you don't read a lot, you don't go and search for things by yourself, but you're very focused on what the man says or what the elder says, you know, so you don't get used to
Yeah.
educate yourself as much as you should. So
Yeah.
when they come here, they might know some things, but other things they don't know, or they know the wrong things. For example, I did a lot of contraception, like talking about sex, contraception. For example, one topic that they don't they don't know or they don't want to know is about HIV and AIDS.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
still believe like if you touch somebody, you can get HIV. They still believe like if you kiss somebody on the cheeks, you get HIV, something like
Yeah.
that. And I know that
Yeah.
in Africa, especially, HIV is a disease that still have a lot of taboos. It's still like very present and everything. Like more that they have much more cases compared to Europe, and but they don't. Apart from the government, that they should like do more prevention and campaign and information.
Yeah.
All of us in Nigeria, they all have a computer or rather a smartphone and internet, so they can actually go and educate themselves.
Yeah.
But they're not interested. They're not interested because
Yeah.
they don't feel them interested, because many of the women when they come here, they just the main thing is to get married, to have children, and that's all.
Yeah.
So even the empowerment, so the process of empowerment of the women is something that I try to do with them, to
Yeah.
let them to, okay, you can get a work, you can earn your money, and you need to take care of yourself. And that means to take care of yourself, to study, understand, educate yourself about your health, what is the basic needs of your health, and so that you're able even to ask for what you need to take care of yourself. So I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
even
Like
like this mixture of
that's why. No, yeah, I get it. That's why I was the importance of like women-led grassroots collectives, or like charities that like go from below and leave the space to like discuss also these things, because when it comes to women migrants, there's also a massive intersection between culture and religion
mhm.
and taboos
Yes, exactly,
and like
exactly.
you know colonial residuals of different kinds of discrimination that haven't been addressed yet. And of course, like if you're a victim of trafficking or any other, I'm also generally the trauma of having to, move countries and flee situations. There's not much space to elaborate these things, of
Yeah,
course. And so that's why it's very important to leave space for these things to be addressed, for sure. Yeah, I agree.
yeah. And in fact, it comes to the next question that I wanted to ask about, because we're already a little bit talking about the healthcare challenges they have women when they arrive. Um, you can tell your experience, I can tell my experience, see if actually they are the same problems they actually that women tell us they have.
Oh, right. I
Okay.
lost connection for a second. So you were asking me the challenge or within healthcare.
Yeah, in the healthcare field, like we already said some things, but I don't know. I want to hear from your point of view and see actually if I had the same experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so the fact that like the invisibility I mentioned before, that's a lot of challenges. As we said, like, you know, there's this linguistic and cultural barrier, and there's the lack, hence, of like basically in country accessible healthcare, which can be a very intimate matter at times when you talk about sexual and reproductive health, as you have mentioned before, and more inclusivity in the field. This, for example, I found out that it's not as much as a problem as here, just because it's I mean, not comparatively at least, because I mean the NHS was built by migrants and still keeps employing a lot of migrant or foreign or, you know, different diversity within the healthcare sector, whereas in it we kind of still are like fighting with with any gender kind of inclusivity in any kind of field, technically.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
That's for sure a fact. And I mean, I've noticed, like, funnily enough, that, like, for example, I've had less hardship finding an Italian doctor in London because there's like platforms and networks than finding a black or brown doctor in Italy, you know, like, which is crazy. That says a lot about the lack of inclusivity. And I mean, that also makes us question, like, what happens to medical students? Are they all forced to leave to try to make a career? Because I know a lot of people study medicine, and most of them have had to gain experiences outside because the field is very hard back here. And I guess you would probably know more about this than I do. I imagine.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, as you said, I think language is definitely one barrier. I think we mentioned language like in all the questions, and it might be like very, very language. Yeah, language is a very big. Like, imagine going a country and without understand anything, you have to do everything, like live your life. So definitely, language is a very huge thing. About representation in the health field care, I mean, I don't know. Like, really, from my own experience, I've seen a lot of black people study more engineer or nursing, so like those short courses. But I can't really say that my experience is representative, because where I grew is a small town, so you don't have a very huge community of black people. At the same time, I remember like some talks of my uncle and aunties that they didn't really want the children to do something very long and expensive. And because they want them to study something that immediately could be independent. So this actually might be influence. And I think I don't know if I was talking with somebody or just talking to myself. I think like the Italian government don't really like push a lot for to have an inclusivity even among students. I remember when I did the test to enter med school. I remember that we have number of places, and 10 places were for foreign people, and 3 places were for Chinese, like really specifically for Chinese. And yeah, and I would say like, okay, why don't you do like maybe places for black people or people coming from low income countries, you know? Instead of foreigners, because foreigners can be even from somebody from France, somebody from everywhere. Instead, if you do like a number of places for low-income countries, and give them like helping them, because I mean,
Yeah.
there were scholarship, but everybody could take scholarship. Okay, many people could take scholarship. Instead, if you do like scholarship only for certain people coming from low-income countries with a particular type of grades, I'm not saying that you have to give for free, but people that have certain curriculum and grades, I think you can start something. You know, you can start having people, even like foreign people, go in that university and start a type of course.
Yeah.
But they, when I started medicine, they didn't do. I don't know if they've actually changed a bit. I hope so, because it was actually stressful for me to hear about like, oh, I don't have the money to pay my studies to my child, because it's true. It's not easy. And Italy is still like one of the country where studying medicine is cheap
Yeah,
compared
exactly.
to, yeah. So and I told them like trying to I don't know, save the money. You can even work. It's hard to work and study, but you can even try, you know. And I told them like there's scholarship, but obviously if you have to maintain the scholarship, you have to maintain high grades and everything. So it's not easy. It's not easy journey. I think for every kind of university faculty, it's not easy journey. But the problem of medicine that is long, is six
Yeah.
years. So as soon as you distract yourself, you become in
You're done.
7 and 8 and 9, and it's not easy for you to maintain to keep up studying for 10 years. I've seen like my last year was
Yeah.
so hard for me to study, and I really want to go to work. So that's the main thing. I say everybody like medicine is not difficult as engineer or something, but it's long. So it's long to
It's long.
keep studying like for 6 years to maintain the type of study. But definitely the representation is very low, and I think there are many factors that are involved, and this affects the challenges that women can front. As I said before, like they were so happy that they have me as a doctor, and to be black and to be
Yeah.
Nigerian, and even for cultural mediation, often they're called even my mother
Oh, really?
to talk. Yeah, to talk with especially women that they were that maybe they were doing prostitution and everything, or
Yeah.
they've been abused and everything. Because, and my mother was a particular one, because my mother, you know, my mother is a mother.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she actually talk as a mother. Sometimes she say like, you can be my daughter. You are the age of my daughter. I'm talking as a mother. So it's
Yeah.
different. Me, they will take me like a friend, like a sister. But my mother is a mother. So sometimes she has
Yeah.
even more effect to these ladies compared to me talking with them.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So
I
it really,
had had a similar. I mean, I've had similar experiences in a different field, which is like law, where the reality I got the closest to generally, like in general, colors of black and brown, and like from any other identification, but also it was very interesting to see how, you know, like discrimination, how this like brown women that went through discrimination in domestic place were like domestic workers. So like there was this intersecting job, right? And the where they went they abuses, which is also a very like unknown area in Italy.
yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of have domestic workers, but like the laws that surround this category of work are not safe at all and are not very clear, which leaves a lot of
Yep.
people like fall gray areas. Like as for any other like job that's like closely linked to women of color, brown women in Italy, and that I had like I was able to get in very intimate like close to, right, you know, this badante call. This thing is like such a big part of the Italian labor market in general. And yeah, and many of them also ended up having contact with my mom. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watching
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah.
And as you say, even the law, the legislation, that is even the last question I wanted to ask, and the high at the same time, especially during this coronavirus weren't so clear, and sometimes they even like, for example, we had a lot of decrees and laws about
Yeah,
how you have to I don't know, about your workplace and everything, the prevention and stuff, and the I think the decree for how to manage migrants coming from the sea on from the health perspective came out only on the 26th of March, and the pandemic starts on the 3rd. So coronavirus was declared pandemic on the 4th, 5th of March.
it's working. I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. Like, yeah, no, I've noticed this as well. I mean, both of like Italy and the UK as well have both started in the last years, as most of European countries implement, would undermine access to healthcare by migrants, by irregular migrants mainly, which
Mm-hmm.
may be sick and also irregular, a deadly combination. And
Mm-hmm.
this is interesting, despite like, you know, despite the fact universal healthcare had become one of the global sustainable development goals in like 2015. Both the UK and Italy, with the Decreti Sicurezza in 2018, have undermined any this universal healthcare right, which is also like made in a way that like that's made by like smoke and mirrors, right? Like there's special
Mm-hmm.
permits for Italy at least that allow migrants to with serious health issues to access to education, but again made in a very vague way, which makes people very confused. And like you add that to the lengthy bureaucracy timings, that also does not help the person that's in extreme necessity for for healthcare. And wait, blah blah blah. I had something else to say, but yeah, and like has, of course, the pandemic has, of course, made who was in a precarious situation even clearly, because and this has been general sanatoria has attempted to regularize migrants, but because an attentive analysis of the law, which has not been
Mm-hmm.
like, policy making, it's one law. Like, you know, you compare what your right that is gonna reach, and actively this sanatoria is trying to regularize people
Mm-hmm.
in order to get better protection in the pandemic. Only allows
Yeah.
only like leaves out the 90% of the migrants that were technically eligible to regularized. So that also shows the discrepancies within the laws itself, and also not to add the fact that like a 6 months regularization is kind of contradiction per se. Like what is the effect that what is the actual effect that what's the change that will happen within these people's life, right? And make them more prone to abuse, because there's been a lot of news about, for example, domestic workers and agricultural workers that abused physically once they had to ask to their employers like to get regularized, right? So that's
Yeah.
also another discrepancy within the law, because it actually makes people more vulnerable uh, to abuse. And yeah, and and like always, like along this line, important to consider that like the migrant healthcare within a pandemic broader and topic is a general healthcare issue that affects us all, because as long as there's like
Yeah.
migrant work are forced to work in the fields close by. And as long as there's migrant workers that like kept, you know, they like, there's a lot of jobs together with the healthcare jobs. There's other jobs like people working in the logistics, domestic workers, people working in the agriculture, have kept going on during the pandemic, and then have allowed everybody else to survive during the pandemic. And if there's no regularization that allows them to come out, to be in the broad light and go to healthcare, you know, that just means that we're going to lay more and more.
Do you think that the pandemic situation, because this is a question that we have been asked a lot, do you think that with the pandemic, the pandemic even make the like discrimination amongst migrants and like regular people more like wider? Do you think like racism and discrimination has been increased with the pandemic? Virus made the discrimination and racism situation even worse in Italy.
Well, we kept saying ne usciremo tutti meglio, right? It doesn't seem like that's what happened. And for sure, the pandemic has like make resurface lots of structural issues of structural racism, and of how within the system people are discriminated, and that makes situation even more.
Okay.
Because a pandemic requires, you know, assistance to families. A pandemic requires safe working conditions for people that have to keep working, because, you know, their family wouldn't survive if they couldn't, and like the rest of the system relies on them, you know, relies on people on these sectors doing their job, which also shows contradiction between skilled and unskilled workers, because it's the unskilled workers and the doctors and medical care.
We become bad because of the pandemic.
Exactly. It's during this pandemic that, at least on like, the only thing that I can say about this is that like it has made a lot of issues that we kept like just sweeping under the carpet out. Like it has made them resurface, and that's also because of like the impact that a lot of activists have brought up, like have going despite this general situation, you know, like the different sindacalisti, Abu Bakr Somaor, but also like from a more social perspective, all the Afro-Italians that have kept like mentioning we have a problem in this sector. So yeah, for sure, the pandemic and the general healthcare situation has I wouldn't say it's made it worse. I mean, it's always the case, right? Like when things start going down, it's like the problems come out and it gets worse, but it's not a problem that we didn't have before. Like it has always been there. But yeah, like this is not a positive note to conclude on. But
yeah,
definitely
your point of view is very similar to my friend's point of view. For example, like Lawrence has written, and talking with different people, we hope that with the pandemic situation, like we're going to be more like collaborative, more like work together and everything. And even in my in the hospital, we say like, oh, like I see the difference. So now we are in the phase, I don't know, maybe phase 3 or phase 4, whatever they call it now. But definitely when there was the pandemic and everything, everybody would work together. We are all together and everything, and stuff like that. Now that everybody is going back to their normal job, we are always arguing, every day arguing, and everybody's thinking about their own, you know, their own business and stuff. So they just went back as they were before, and maybe even worse, because definitely like there's some doctors that have not worked, they're not done their private work and everything, so they've not heard as much as they used to hear before. So they are more like
Okay.
Yeah, I want to go back to work. I don't care about the prevention or this and that, blah blah blah. Yes, and so is so I don't know, like there were many articles even in the health field, like saying that actually with the pandemic, the discrimination and racism against the migrants were even worse, because there was a certain point that were considered even the people that can infect other people, because of even of the
Yeah.
bad condition they were living, because they weren't considered at all at the beginning. So they weren't considered, like they don't stay here, so they don't even think about how to
Yeah. Yeah.
create a safe place. And then after there's this one case I don't remember again, where so there was one migrant that they came out positive, and so they had to test all the building, and there were people in front of this building saying that they should not go out from the building. Instead, they're going to, I don't know, hurt them or whatever. And this is crazy, because not all of them they were positive. There were some where they were negative. But it's like, now I came out positive,
Yeah.
and you come out to my place and tell me that I shouldn't go out, or not on my or the people inside the
Yeah.
building should go out, because we're going to infect
Yeah.
everybody. So
But it's interesting because it shows, like, you know, that's the problem, right?
yeah,
Like lately I read the news, but like Bologna and Mondragone, I think, have been discovered as two new focoli. But the only thing that puts in common these two places where these new focoli have been found out was within the workplace of the conditions these people were working within. And there's been in the last month so many cases of workers, usually migrants, trying to request from their employers safe work conditions, you know, distances, even just simply mascherine, you know, and they were denied. So clearly looking at the problem in the wrong way, like,
yeah,
and sadly enough, like, racialized problem, but in the wrong way, as in like racialized because, oh, they brought the virus, which is like scientifically not the case. But
yeah,
yeah, the problem is like the fact that like people like the general narrative clinges on racializing and blaming people when it's actually the conditions where people have to live, which is caused by but not caused by them, clearly. And they keep going on with, like, they keep essential sectors that we're talking, like the latest focali were found within the sector, which means everything,
yeah,
right? Like, it means like products being sent back and forth and meals and stuff. So it's essential work. So the problem is just being seen from the wrong side instead of being seen from what it is, like where it derives from. Um, but like, I mean, it's also nice seeing like so many people like speaking
yeah,
out about this, because
definitely.
until now, for example, the exploitation in the agriculture sector, or within also like food deliveries, which employs a lot of migrants and a lot of like usually like North Africans and Africans,
Yeah,
and exploits them, has come out more vocally, which also, like, which is a good thing. And these are not new problems; they have been going on for a while. The agriculture sector, especially. So I guess that's on the part. The good thing is that like the stress of the situation has led more attention. Also, thanks to the to all the people who are focusing on this, and stressing also how healthcare is a collective problem. It's a problem for all of us. Anyone's healthcare is a universal problem for
yeah,
everyone, because it
exactly,
affects
exactly,
how.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we have I finished with the questions. My own question. I've seen that somebody wrote a question before, so we can give this one, and we can end our interview. So, do you think limited social networks play a role?
Social networks, as in the social networks of migrants, or social networks in the host country. As in what?
She did.
What do you think?
She didn't mention more. I don't know if she's still online. Eunice, social network as what? Maybe I think.
Well,
Go first.
no, I guess like if we're talking about if we're talking about